I never thought a simple evening at home could spiral into something I'd never forget. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, each second dragging like a weight I couldn't shake. Rain tapped gently against the window, a soft, insistent rhythm that somehow made the silence feel louder. I was curled up on the couch, a half-empty mug of coffee warming my hands, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, trying to distract myself from the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. It was one of those nights where everything seems ordinary on the surface. The quiet hum of the heater, the dim glow of the lamp, the faint scent of vanilla from the candle I'd lit hours ago. But underneath, tension had a way of creeping in. I had no idea that within minutes, my life would tilt off its axis, and a single glance at something I shouldn't have would change everything. I had just set my mug on the coffee table when I noticed her phone, lying there, forgotten. I froze for a second, the small, blinking notification catching my eye. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice. Her phone was hers, and privacy mattered, but tonight felt different. Curiosity, nervous instinct, or maybe fate. My hand trembled slightly as I leaned closer. The screen lit up under my gaze. Her last message flashed in bold letters, a fragment of a conversation that immediately twisted my stomach into knots. I wasn't supposed to see this, and yet, I couldn't look away. The words were simple, but they carried a weight I hadn't anticipated. Words that made my chest tighten, my thoughts scatter, and my mind race through every possible scenario. I glanced up at her, sitting across the room, unaware, humming softly as she organized papers on the counter. The warm light framed her hair in soft highlights, and the curve of her smile made my heart ache in ways I hadn't felt in months. I wanted to warn myself, step back, don't read it, don't let curiosity betray you. But the pull was magnetic. Something about the tone, the way her words had formed, hinted at a secret. Something I was only beginning to glimpse. A shiver ran down my spine, partly from the chill in the air, partly from the fear of what I might discover. My thoughts were chaotic, a jumble of what-ifs and no ways. Could this really be happening? Did she really? The very idea made my palms sweat. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears as I hesitated. Time seemed to stretch unnaturally, each tick of the clock magnifying the tension in the room. And then it happened. My eyes traced the message again, and the words hit differently this time. Something inside me shifted, an instinct I couldn't ignore. I realized that whatever I had just seen was not just a casual text. It was a turning point, a crossroads that could redefine everything I thought I knew about her, about us. My mind raced, my chest tight, and my legs felt like lead. Should I confront her? Should I pretend I hadn't seen anything? Or should I wait? The rain outside intensified, hammering against the windows like impatient fingers, echoing the turmoil inside me. The room felt smaller, the shadows longer. I wanted to speak, to break the silence, but the words caught in my throat. This isn't just curiosity. This is something bigger, something dangerous, something that demanded attention. And deep down, I knew nothing in my life would ever feel the same again after this moment. I still remember how ordinary my life felt before that night, the routines and rhythms I took for granted. I worked from home most days, typing away on my laptop in a small, cluttered office, filled with stacks of notebooks, pens, and half-drunk coffee cups. My apartment wasn't extravagant, but it was mine. A cozy little refuge with warm wooden floors, mismatched furniture, and a faint scent of lavender lingering from the candle I always burned in the evenings. I liked order, little habits that grounded me, folding my laundry a certain way, keeping the same mug for coffee, and leaving her favorite blanket draped over the couch just so. She, on the other hand, was the opposite of methodical. Her name was Elena, and she had a kind of chaos that was magnetic. She worked at a boutique downtown, surrounded by racks of fabrics and the soft murmur of customers. Her hair always seemed to defy gravity in the most effortless way, a cascade of dark waves that caught the light just right. Her eyes. I could get lost in them for hours, especially when she laughed, that short, sharp burst that made her whole face light up. She had a way of noticing things, small details that no one else did. And somehow she noticed me too, even in my quiet, obsessive little routines. Our relationship wasn't perfect, far from it. We had our small fights over miscommunications, over missed messages, or nights when one of us stayed too late at work. But there was warmth, a sense of trust that had taken years to build. That's why her phone sitting on the counter that night felt so ordinary at first. She had set it down absent-mindedly, probably expecting to check it later. And yet, that small object would soon carry the weight of everything I didn't know. I also had my friends, a small circle who often acted as my conscience and my chaos coordinators. There was Max, my best friend since college, who had a knack for reading people's expressions better than they could themselves. And Sophie, Elena's roommate, who often dropped by with cookies or sarcastic comments, her laughter bouncing off the walls and filling the apartment with a strange kind of comfort. Both of them, unknowingly, would play roles in the unfolding tension without ever realizing it. The apartment itself became a character in those nights. Shadows stretched across the walls as the streetlight outside flickered. The sound of the rain hitting the glass created a rhythm that both calmed and unnerved me. The soft hum of the heater mixed with the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. It all felt alive, as if the apartment was silently watching me, waiting. Small objects took on strange significance. The coffee mug that always sat in the same spot, the keys that jingled when she came home, the letter opener on the desk that glinted ominously in the lamplight. Even the little things became symbols, foreshadowing what was about to unravel. And then there were the subtle signs I'd started noticing in the days leading up to that night. Elena had been distracted, texting more than usual, smiling at her phone with a secret I couldn't share. There were small gestures, a pause in conversation, a thoughtful frown, a sigh that didn't reach her eyes, that whispered of something unsaid. I tried to ignore it, to chalk it up to stress at work or the chaos of life. But deep down, a knot of unease had begun to form in my chest, tightening a little more each day. I remember sitting at the kitchen table earlier that evening, absent-mindedly stirring my coffee, while Elena hummed from the living room. The light from the lamp caught her hair in golden highlights, her movements fluid and easy. I watched her, a sense of calm settling over me, unaware of the storm brewing just beyond that warm glow. I told myself everything was fine, that curiosity was just a fleeting impulse, and yet, every fiber of me sensed that something was off. There were small habits, little quirks, that had always made her endearing. The way she always left a scrap of paper with reminders for herself, the soft clinking of her jewelry as she moved, even the scent of her perfume lingering faintly on the coat she had hung by the door. And yet, all of these familiar comforts now felt fragile, like thin glass that could shatter at any moment. That's what made the next few minutes, the moment I saw her phone, feel like stepping off a cliff, into the unknown. The moment I saw her phone, everything changed. I had been leaning slightly over the counter, ostensibly reaching for the coffee mug I'd left there, when a notification lit up the screen. It was a message from someone whose name I didn't recognize. A simple line of text, yet it felt like a punch straight to my chest. I froze, my fingers hovering midair, heart hammering like a drum in a storm. I shouldn't be looking, I shouldn't be doing this. But my eyes betrayed me, glued to the words that seemed innocuous on the surface, but carried an invisible weight I couldn't ignore. The message read something like, "I can't wait to see you tonight. Don't tell anyone." My stomach dropped. My mind raced, cycling through every possible explanation, every innocent scenario, every worst-case nightmare. She couldn't, could she? The thought alone made my chest tighten, a mix of fear and disbelief warring with the undeniable pull of curiosity. I wanted to look away, to pretend I hadn't seen it, but I couldn't. It was like my body had a life of its own, urging me to understand, to see more, even as my mind screamed at me not to. Elena hummed softly from the living room, her voice a calm, comforting melody that contrasted sharply with the storm of thoughts in my head. She was blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing just a few feet away. I watched her move with that effortless grace I had always adored. The way her Hair caught the lamplight, the soft clink of the bracelet around her wrist, the small smile she gave as if she knew some secret I didn't. And maybe she did. I felt a surge of panic. My first instinct was to shut the phone, hide it, erase any trace of having seen it. But then another notification popped up. A preview of another message, just a few words that made my chest tighten even more. Everything will change after tonight, be ready. What the hell did that mean? My mind spun in a frenzy. Was this innocent? Was it dangerous? Was I reading too much into a harmless conversation? Or had I stumbled into something that could unravel everything I thought I knew about her? About us? I couldn't breathe properly, my hands slick with sweat as I gripped the edge of the counter. I tried to ground myself, reminding myself of the life we'd built, the trust, the shared jokes, the quiet moments on the couch. But the words on that screen stabbed through all of it, sharp and relentless. Could I ever see her the same way again? I shook my head, trying to dismiss the racing thoughts, but it was impossible. The image of her smiling, oblivious to the storm I had just uncovered, burned into my mind. The tension in the apartment became suffocating. The rain outside had picked up, drumming harder against the windows, the sound a chaotic percussion that mirrored my thoughts. Every small noise, the creak of the floorboards as she shifted, the hum of the fridge, even the distant car horn from the street, felt amplified like the world was pressing in on me. I glanced again at the phone, feeling guilty and terrified all at once. I wasn't supposed to see this. I crossed a line, and then came the realization. This wasn't just a passing curiosity. This was a decision point. I could ignore it, let it slide, and pretend I hadn't seen a thing, or I could confront it and risk everything. My mind reeled with the possibilities: anger, betrayal, heartbreak, maybe even relief if I was wrong. But one thing was undeniable. I couldn't go back to that moment of innocence. Whatever path I chose, my life had already shifted. I forced myself to step back, breathe, and try to think clearly. Okay, don't panic, don't overreact. But even as I repeated those words, I knew they were hollow. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it had roots that dug deep into every corner of my trust, every fiber of my relationship. Elena turned toward me suddenly, holding a small stack of papers, her smile easy and warm. "Hey," she said, her voice pulling me back from the edge of panic. "Did you want more coffee?" I nodded, swallowing hard, feeling my throat tighten. My mind screamed a million conflicting responses, and I forced a casual smile. Yeah, sure, thanks." But as I handed her the mug, my fingers brushing hers briefly, I couldn't shake the words on that screen. I couldn't unsee them. Everything had changed. The next few days were a blur, like I was moving through a world that had subtly, almost imperceptibly, shifted beneath my feet. Every glance, every small movement of Elena's felt loaded with potential meaning. I found myself analyzing every word she said, every pause in conversation, every laugh and sigh. Her phone, once just an ordinary object on the counter, had become a loaded symbol in my mind, an enigmatic clue that I couldn't ignore. I tried to act normal, tried to maintain the rhythms of our shared life, but it was impossible. Even simple routines became exercises in self-control. Pouring coffee for her in the morning felt like an act of silent observation. I watched her eyes, her hands, the slight crease in her brow when she read a text. Every small gesture seemed meaningful, every glance possibly hiding something. Was she hiding more than I realized? The thought gnawed at me relentlessly. I reached out to Max one evening, unable to contain the storm inside. We sat in my tiny kitchen, the rain again hammering the windows, our mugs of coffee growing cold as we talked. "I don't know what to do," I confessed. Voice low, almost a whisper, as if speaking louder would make it real. I saw a message on her phone. I shouldn't have, but I did. And now I can't stop thinking about it. Max leaned back, eyebrows drawn together. "Did you read more? Or just the one?" "Just the one," I said quickly. But even as I spoke, my mind flicked back to the second notification, the one that had made my heart sink. "Everything will change after tonight. Be ready." He nodded slowly. "Look, I get it. Curiosity is one thing, but you're spiraling. You need to figure out what you actually know versus what you're imagining." Otherwise, you'll destroy everything with suspicion. I wanted to take his advice to heart. I tried. I tried to distract myself with work, with emails, with mundane chores. I even went for a run in the rain one evening, letting droplets soak my hoodie, feeling the cold sting on my face, trying to outrun the anxiety that clung to me like a second skin. But every step, every breath, brought me back to the same gnawing uncertainty. What if she's hiding something serious? What if I misread everything? The complications didn't stop there. At work, my mind wandered constantly, leaving me distracted during meetings, fumbling over minor details I would normally handle with ease. Colleagues noticed, asking if I was okay, and I laughed off their concern, but the effort of pretending normalcy exhausted me. At home, small, subtle changes began to unsettle me further. Elena's phone would buzz in the night, and she'd smile mysteriously before putting it face down. She sometimes seemed lost in thought, typing messages I couldn't see, her brow furrowed, her lips pressed together. I told myself it was probably work, or a friend, but part of me screamed that it was more. I started noticing little inconsistencies, things that had never mattered before. A jacket she left hanging differently, a mug on the counter in a place she never put it, a receipt I hadn't seen before. They were minor, insignificant in isolation, but strung together they felt like clues in a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. One evening, Sophie, Elena's roommate, stopped by unannounced. She leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed, a teasing smile on her face. "You've been acting weird lately," she said. "More tense than usual. What's going on?" I forced a smile, my heart thudding. "Nothing. Just stressed with work." Sophie didn't look convinced, her eyes narrowing slightly. Sure, but if you're hiding something, you might as well tell me. You can't fool me." I laughed, the sound hollow. "I'm fine, really." But as she left, closing the door softly behind her, I felt a creeping sense of inevitability. Everyone around me had become a mirror reflecting my paranoia. Every small gesture from Elena, every innocent smile, seemed like a test I wasn't prepared for. Then came the day of the small crisis, the first real external conflict that seemed to confirm my worst fears. Elena had an event downtown, a fashion showcase she was excited about. I had promised to come, but the idea of watching her interact with the world while my mind spun with suspicion was unbearable. I followed her reluctantly, trying to maintain a calm exterior. But every step, every laugh, every conversation she had with others felt like a test I was failing. I couldn't stop noticing the subtle signs, the way she glanced at her phone, the brief smile at a text message, the way she hesitated mid-sentence as if holding back something. My internal conflict raged. Do I confront her now, risk embarrassment and tension, or wait and gather more evidence? Each option seemed equally dangerous. Back at the apartment later that evening, a text arrived for me from an unknown number. "You're noticing things. You're paying attention." Good. I froze, my pulse raced, a cold dread crawling up my spine. It wasn't a threat, but it was enough to make me question everything. My paranoia had a new fuel source, one that made even mundane movements around the apartment feel like part of a larger puzzle I was barely equipped to solve. And in the quiet moments, when Elena slept or hummed softly in another room, I replayed the messages, her gestures, her words, trying to connect invisible dots. I felt both powerless and hyper-aware, consumed by a need to understand the truth before it slipped further away. My mind swung violently between fear and hope, suspicion and empathy. Maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm not. By the end of the week, tension had escalated to a near-breaking point. I could no longer move through our apartment with detachment. Every shared glance, every casual smile, felt charged with meaning. Trust was fragile, suspicion heavy. The slow burn anxiety that had been building since that first accidental glimpse of her phone had now reached a point where every interaction could trigger a revelation, and I realized, whatever came next, the life we had known was about to crack. It happened on a Thursday night, the kind of night that feels unremarkable until everything changes. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the rain having slowed to a steady drizzle, the room dimly lit by the soft glow of a single lamp. Elena had stepped out for a moment to grab something from her car, and I found myself alone with the phone. The same one I had glimpsed days ago, the one that had ignited this slow-burning storm in my chest. Part of me screamed not to touch it, not to indulge in curiosity again. But my fingers, trembling with a mix of fear and anticipation, hovered over the screen. I couldn't stop myself. I unlocked it carefully, almost reverently, as if handling something fragile. And then I saw it, a new message thread I hadn't noticed before, one that made my stomach drop in a way nothing else had. The messages weren't what I had feared. There was no betrayal, no hidden romance, no secret plan that would destroy what we had. Instead, there was a string of messages filled with concern, vulnerability, and fear. She had been talking to someone close, a family member, it seemed, about a problem I had never known she was carrying. There were words like, "I don't know how to tell him, and I'm scared he'll misunderstand," and suddenly everything clicked. The anxiety, the distant glances, the hurried texts, they weren't signs of deception. They were signs of struggle. My chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with a confusing mix of relief and guilt. I had assumed the worst. I had let my imagination run wild, creating shadows where there were none. And yet, the realization hit me hard. I had crossed a line. I had invaded her privacy, and the weight of that guilt pressed down like a heavy blanket, suffocating and inescapable. I barely noticed her footsteps returning, her voice soft in the doorway. "Hey, are you okay? You've been quiet all evening." I forced a smile, but it faltered almost immediately. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking, I guess." She paused, as if sensing something in my tone. Her eyes searched mine, gentle but curious. "You've been distant," she said. "Is everything okay between us?" The words pierced me. I wanted to tell her the truth, to confess that I had seen her messages, that I had feared she was hiding something, that I had let suspicion cloud my judgment, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not when the weight of what I had discovered still sat heavily in my chest. I swallowed hard, forcing the words into a casual shrug. "Yeah, I just have a lot on my mind, work stuff." She nodded slowly, unconvinced, but didn't push further. She moved to the counter, her presence calm yet magnetic, and I watched her, realizing for the first time just how deeply I cared. The fear I had felt, the tension that had built between us over days, all melted into a strange, vulnerable clarity. I love her, I trust her, and I need to make this right. That night became a turning point in ways I couldn't fully articulate at the time. The storm of suspicion and anxiety that had consumed me began to shift towards something else: clarity, empathy, and a determination to bridge the growing distance between us. The following evening, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The tension had reached a breaking point, and the silence between us had grown heavier than any storm outside. The rain had stopped, but the streets glistened with puddles reflecting the streetlights in fractured shards, as if the world itself mirrored my inner turmoil. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, every beat a drum signaling that tonight everything had to be confronted. "Elena," I began, my voice low, almost trembling despite my best effort at steadiness. She looked up from her laptop, surprised but didn't move. Her eyes were soft, expectant, curious, and my chest tightened at the vulnerability in that gaze. I need to talk to you about something important." She tilted her head slightly, concern knitting her brow. "Okay, what's going on?" I took a deep breath, struggling to control the storm of thoughts and emotions raging inside me. "I saw your phone," I confessed. The words hit the room like a stone thrown into water, sending ripples across the quiet apartment. She froze, the color draining from her face, her eyes wide. I didn't mean to, but I saw a message," I continued, my voice catching. "And at first, I thought maybe something was wrong. Maybe you were hiding something from me." Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence stretched, taut and heavy, as if the air itself were waiting for the next heartbeat to break it. My hands shook slightly as I gestured toward the phone on the counter. "I shouldn't have looked. I know that. I know," she interrupted gently, her voice soft, measured, but firm. She stood and walked toward me, her steps slow, deliberate, yet graceful. "I've been scared too. Scared you'd misunderstand me. I didn't want to worry you or make you feel like you weren't enough. I felt my throat tighten, the weight of misunderstanding, suspicion, and fear melting into a raw, aching vulnerability. I let my mind run wild. I assumed the worst. I didn't stop to think that maybe there was more to it than I realized. She reached out, placing her hand over mine. The warmth of her touch grounded me, a lifeline pulling me back from the edge of my own spiraling thoughts. "I've been dealing with something," she admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Something I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid it would change how you saw me." And in that moment, the full scope of the past week, the anxiety, the paranoia, the tension that had made even the simplest moments unbearable, collapsed into clarity. The messages, the strange glances, the hurried texts, they weren't signs of betrayal. They were signs of trust withheld out of fear. She wasn't hiding from me. She was protecting me, protecting us in the only way she knew how. "I wish you had told me," I whispered, my voice breaking slightly. "I wish I hadn't assumed the worst." "You didn't know," she said softly, squeezing my hand. "You didn't see the whole picture, and maybe I should have told you sooner. But I wasn't ready. I needed to figure it out myself first." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat refusing to budge. "I get it now. I hate that I let fear get the better of me, that I let assumptions drive a wedge between us." "You mean everything to me, Elena." Her eyes softened, the tension in her shoulders melting. "And you to me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "That's why I didn't want anything to come between us. That's why I hesitated." I leaned in slowly, careful, as if the world would shatter if I moved too fast. She met me halfway, and the weight that had hung over us, the unspoken doubts, the fear, the quiet tension, began to lift. Our foreheads pressed together, and I felt the warmth of her breath, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. It was a moment of quiet intimacy, the kind that doesn't need words. "I promise," I murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No more assumptions, no more letting fear drive me. From now on, we face everything together." She smiled through a tear, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me, a release so profound it nearly brought me to my knee. "Together," she echoed, and the words settled in the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. The rest of the night was a series of small reconciliations, little gestures that carried the weight of forgiveness and trust. We shared our thoughts, our fears, the vulnerabilities we had kept hidden, and in doing so, the bond between us strengthened in a way nothing else could replicate. The morning after our confrontation felt quiet in a way that was both strange and comforting. The apartment, once a stage for tension and doubt, now seemed almost peaceful, bathed in soft sunlight that filtered through the blinds. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the streets glistening and cool, the lingering scent of wet pavement drifting in through the slightly open window. I could hear distant birds chirping, a reminder that life continued outside our little bubble of confusion and fear. Elena stirred beside me, stretching lazily, hair tousled from sleep, and I felt a rush of warmth wash over me. The previous night's intensity hadn't disappeared. It had transformed. The fear and anxiety had given way to understanding and connection. I watched her yawn softly, covering her mouth with a delicate hand, and realized how much I had missed these ordinary, intimate moments while my mind had been clouded with suspicion. We made breakfast together, a simple, mundane task, yet it felt extraordinary. I poured coffee into our favorite mugs, the steam curling in the morning light, and she sliced bread for toast, humming a quiet tune that seemed to harmonize perfectly with the rhythm of my own heartbeat. We laughed softly over small mishaps, a dropped knife, a spilled coffee drop, and in those tiny gestures, I felt the tension of the past week dissolve completely. "Funny how a week can feel like a year," I murmured, stirring my coffee slowly, my eyes meeting hers. She smiled, a gentle warmth in her gaze. "And yet it taught us something important, didn't it?" I nodded. "Yeah, about trust, about assumptions, about talking instead of letting fear take over." Her fingers brushed mine, and I felt that familiar spark, the quiet, steady connection that had always existed between us. only now stronger and more resilient. I realized then that the messages I had seen, the anxiety they caused, had ultimately brought us closer. The conflict had forced honesty, vulnerability, and openness, and in its aftermath, our bond had deepened in a way ordinary days never could. We spent the day in small, ordinary ways that felt extraordinary precisely because of what had come before. We cooked lunch together, the aroma of garlic and fresh herbs filling the apartment. We shared stories and memories, laughing at old jokes and teasing one another over minor quirks. Every glance, every touch, every soft word carried the weight of reconciliation, intimacy, and emotional growth. Even the little interactions outside the apartment felt different. Walking hand in hand through the streets, I noticed details I had ignored before. The way the sunlight hit the rooftops, the chatter of passers-by, the smell of coffee from a nearby cafe. Everything seemed sharper, brighter, more vivid. It was as if the storm we had endured had cleared a path, allowing me to see both Elena and the world with new eyes. The apartment was quiet that night, bathed in the soft golden light of the lamps we'd left on. The city outside hushed after a long day. Elena and I sat side by side on the couch, wrapped in the same blanket, our fingers still intertwined. It was one of those rare moments where everything felt suspended, time slowed, and the world outside seemed distant, almost unimportant. I looked at her, tracing the curve of her face, the way her hair fell into her eyes, and felt a warmth that went beyond relief. It wasn't just the resolution of tension or the end of the storm that had consumed us for days. It was the understanding we had forged, fragile yet strong, between us. I know you and you know me. That knowledge carried more weight than any dramatic revelation could have. She smiled, glancing down at our joined hands. "It's funny," she said softly, "how a few words on a screen can turn your whole world upside down." I chuckled quietly, squeezing her hand gently. "Yeah, and yet, here we are. Stronger, I think." Her eyes met mine, and I could see the same mixture of gratitude, relief, and lingering vulnerability reflected in them that I felt in my own chest. There was no need to speak about what had happened. Not tonight. The unspoken understanding was enough. We had survived the storm, faced the fear, and come out the other side more connected than ever. I reached for the phone, the very object that had caused so much anxiety, and set it aside. It seemed almost symbolic, no longer a source of fear, no longer a trigger for doubt. Just another part of life, unremarkable now, a reminder that trust had been tested and reaffirmed. We leaned back, letting the silence stretch comfortably between us. The faint hum of the heater, the soft flicker of candlelight, and the distant, muted sounds of the city created a cocoon of peace. I rested my forehead against hers, closing my eyes for a moment, savoring the quiet intimacy. It was ordinary, yes, but extraordinary in its significance. "Elena," I whispered, voice low but steady, "thank you for trusting me. And I promise, no more assumptions, no more letting fear take control. Only honesty, only us." She smiled, resting her head against my shoulder. "And I promise to share everything. Even when it's scary, we face it together." As the night deepened, I held her close, letting the quiet, rain-scented air fill the room. Life would continue, challenges would arise, and moments of doubt might return. But we had learned something profound: the strength of connection, the power of honesty, and the beauty of facing uncertainty together. And in that quiet evening, I knew one thing for certain: no matter what happened, we would navigate it together.